Section 1. You will hear an estate agent talking to a customer who wants to rent a house. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 8. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning. How can I help you?
Hello. I'm interested in renting a house somewhere in the town.
Right. Could I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Stephen Godfrey.
And tell me how many bedrooms you're looking for.
Well, we'd need 4 because I'm going to share the house with 3 friends.
The number of bedrooms needed is 4, so 4 has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 8.
Good morning. How can I help you?
Hello. I'm interested in renting a house somewhere in the town.
Right. Could I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Stephen Godfrey.
And tell me how many bedrooms you're looking for.
Well, we'd need 4 because I'm going to share the house with 3 friends.
OK. There are several of that size on our books. They mostly belong to families who are working abroad at the moment. What about the location?
It'd be nice to be central.
Oh, that might be difficult, as most houses of that size are in the suburbs. Still, there are a few. What's your upper limit for the rent?
We'd like something around £500 a month, but we could go up to £600 if we have to. But we can't go beyond that.
Do you know how long you want to rent the house for? The minimum let is 6 months, as you probably realise.
We're at college here for 2 years, and we don't want to have to move during that time if we can avoid it.
Right. And how soon do you want to move in? All our lets start on the 1st of the month.
Well, as soon as possible, really, so that means September 1st.
OK. Let me have a look at what we've got. We have photographs of all the houses on our book, so you can get an idea of what they're like. There's this one in Oakington Avenue at £550 a month, combined living room and dining room with a separate kitchen. It doesn't have a garage, though you can park in the road.
We'd prefer to have one if possible.
Right. Then have a look at this house in Mead Street. It's got a very large living room and kitchen, bathroom, cloakroom.
How much is it?
That one's £580. It's very well furnished and equipped. It also has plenty of space for parking, and it's available for a minimum of a year. Oh, and there's a big garden.
I don't think we could cope with that, to be honest. We'll be too busy to look after it.
OK. Then there's this older house in Hamilton Road. Living room, kitchen, diner, and it has a study. £550 a month.
That looks rather nice. But whereabouts in Hamilton Road?
Towards the western end.
Oh, that'll be very noisy. I know the area.
Yes, it's pretty lively, but some people like it, though. Well, what about this house in Devon Close?
That looks lovely.
There's a big demand for houses in that area, so prices tend to be quite high. But this one hasn't been decorated for a few years, which has kept the rent down a bit. It's got a living room, dining room and small kitchen, and it's £595 a month. I think it would suit you from what you've said.
It sounds fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 9 and 10. Now listen and answer questions 9 and 10.
Why is that part of town so popular?
Well, there's a big scheme to improve the district, and it'll soon have the best facilities for miles around.
What sort of thing?
There's a big sports centre under construction, which will be very impressive when it's finished. In fact, the swimming pool's already opened, ahead of schedule, and it's attracting a lot of people.
What about cinemas? Are there any in the area?
The only one closed down last year, and it's now in the process of being converted into a film museum. The local people are trying to get a new cinema added to the scheme.
I think I heard something about a plan to replace the existing concert hall with a larger one.
Ah, that's due to start next year.
Well, it sounds an interesting area to live in. Could I go and see the house, please?
Yes, of course.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2.
Section 2. You will hear a guide at an art museum talking to a group of visitors. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Good morning and welcome to the museum. One with a remarkable range of exhibits which I'm sure you'll enjoy. My name's Greg and I'll tell you about the various collections as we go around. But before we go, let me just give you a taste of what we have here. Well, for one thing, we have a fine collection of 20th and 21st century paintings, many by very well-known artists. I'm sure you'll recognize several of the paintings. This is the gallery that attracts the largest number of visitors, so it's best to go in early in the day before the crowds arrive. Then there are the 19th century paintings. The museum was opened in the middle of that century, and several of the artists each donated one work to get the museum started, as it were. So they're of special interest to us. We feel closer to them than to other works. The sculpture gallery has a number of fine exhibits, but I'm afraid it's currently closed for refurbishment. You'll need to come back next year to see it properly, but a number of the sculptures have been moved to other parts of the museum. Around the World is a temporary exhibition. You've probably seen something about it on TV or in the newspapers. It's created a great deal of interest because it presents objects from every continent and many countries and provides information about their social context, why they were made, who for, and so on. Then there's the collection of coins. This is what you might call a focused specialist collection because all the coins come from this country and were produced between 2,000 and 1,000 years ago. And many of them were discovered by ordinary people digging their gardens and donated to the museum. All our porcelain and glass was left to the museum by its founder when he died in 1878, and in the terms of his will, we're not allowed to add anything to that collection. He believed it was perfect in itself, and we don't see any reason to disagree.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Okay, that was something about the collections, and now here's some more practical information, in case you need it. Most of the museum facilities are downstairs in the basement, so you go down the stairs here. When you reach the bottom of the stairs, you'll find yourself in a sitting area with comfortable chairs and sofas where you can have a rest before continuing your exploration of the museum. We have a very good restaurant which serves excellent food all day in a relaxing atmosphere. To reach it, when you get to the bottom of the stairs, go straight ahead to the far side of the sitting area, then turn right into the corridor. You'll see the door of the restaurant facing you. If you just want a snack or if you'd like to eat somewhere with facilities for children, we also have a cafe. When you reach the bottom of the stairs, you'll need to go straight ahead, turn right into the corridor, and the cafe is immediately on the right. And talking about children, there are baby-changing facilities downstairs. Cross the sitting area, continue straight ahead along the corridor on the left, and you and your baby will find the facilities on the left-hand side. The cloakroom, where you should leave coats, umbrellas, and any large bags, is on the left-hand side of the sitting area. It's through the last door before you come to the corridor. There are toilets on every floor, but in the basement, they're the first rooms on the left when you get down there. Okay, now if you've got anything to leave in the cloakroom, please do that now, and then we'll start our tour.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear two students, Katie and Joe, discussing a presentation in their film studies course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Joe, you know I'm giving a presentation in our film studies class next week.
Yes.
Well, could we discuss it? I could do with getting someone else's opinion.
Of course, Katie. What are you going to talk about?
It's about film adaptations of Shakespeare's plays. I've got very interested in all the different approaches that film directors take.
Uh-huh.
So I thought I'd start with Giannetti, who's a professor of film and literature, and in one of his books he came up with a straightforward classification of film adaptations based on how faithful they are to the original plays and novels.
Right.
I've already made some notes on that, so I just need to sort those out before the presentation. I thought that next I'd ask the class to come up with the worst examples of Shakespeare adaptations that they've seen, and to say why. That should be more fun than having their favourite versions.
Yes, I can certainly think of a couple.
Right. Next, I want to talk about Rachel Malco. I came across something on the internet about her work on film adaptations, and I was thinking of showing some film clips to illustrate her ideas.
Will you have enough time, though, both to prepare and during the presentation? After all, I doubt if you'll be able to find all the clips you want.
Perhaps you're right. OK, well, I'd better do some slides instead, saying how various films relate to what she says. That should encourage discussion. Next, I want to say something about how plays may be chosen for adaptation because they're concerned with issues of the time when the film is made.
You mean things like patriotism or the role of government?
Exactly. It's quite tricky, but I've got a few ideas I'd like to discuss.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
And finally, I want to talk about a few adaptations that I think illustrate a range of approaches and make some comments on them. Do you know the Japanese film Ran?
I haven't seen it. It was based on Shakespeare's King Lear, wasn't it?
That's right. It was a very loose adaptation, using the same situation and story, but moving it to 16th century Japan instead of 16th century Britain. So, for example, the king's daughters become sons, because in Japanese culture at that time, women couldn't succeed to the throne.
OK. I hope you're going to talk about the 1993 film of Much Ado About Nothing. I think that's one of the best Shakespeare films. It really brings the play to life, doesn't it?
Yes, I agree. And I think filming it in Italy, where the play is set, makes you see what life was like at the time of the play.
Absolutely. Right, what's next?
Next, I thought Romeo and Juliet, the 1996 film, which moves the action into the present day.
Yes, it worked really well, I thought, changing the two feuding families in the original to two competing business empires, even though they're speaking in the English of the original play.
You'd expect it would sound really bizarre, but I found I soon got used to it.
Me too.
Then I thought I'd include a real Hollywood film, one that's intended to appeal to a mass commercial audience.
There must be quite a number of those.
Yes, but I've picked the 1996 film of Hamlet. It included every line of the text, but it's more like a typical action hero movie. There are loads of special effects, but no unifying interpretation of the play.
All show and no substance.
Exactly. Then there's Prospero's books, based on The Tempest. That was really innovative from a stylistic point of view.
Didn't it include dance and singing and animation as well as live actors?
Yes, it did. I also want to mention Looking for Richard. Did you ever see it?
No, but I've read about it. It was a blend of a documentary with a few scenes from Richard III, wasn't it?
That's right. It's more a way of looking into how people nowadays connect with the playwright. The play is really just the starting point. And that'll be where I finish.
Well, it sounds as though it'll be very interesting.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 4.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear the first part of one lecture, in a series of lectures about environmental issues. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. In this lecture series, we have been looking at the most pressing environmental issues that the world faces. One of those issues, global warming, has become very fashionable to talk about in the past decade. Though I'm not trying to diminish its importance as a problem, it must be understood that the effects of an increasingly warm planet will not be seen for many more decades. One problem affecting the lives of people right now is the scarcity of water. The need for fresh water will only increase as the world's population grows, especially in developing countries. In the future, changing weather patterns that come with global warming will only make the problem worse. People need water to drink, cook food, shower and wash clothes. Most of the planet is covered with water, but unfortunately only a tiny percentage of it is fit for human use. Of all the water in the world, less than 3% is fresh water. More than 2/3 of that remaining percentage is locked up in glaciers in Greenland, Antarctica and elsewhere, also unavailable for human use. The water vital for life comes from lakes, rivers, underground aquifers, rain and snow. This surface water, groundwater and precipitation is not disturbed equally across the Earth's surface. For example, Canada, which has about 0.5% of the world's people, contains about 10% of the world's readily available fresh water. Brazil makes up about 3% of the world's population, but within its borders contain nearly 12% of the world's freshwater resources. As the economies of developing countries grow, the need for fresh water also grows. One example of this has to do with the production of meat. In some countries, the demand for beef increases when people earn more money. However, raising cattle is incredibly water-intensive, requiring about 15 tons of water for 1 kilogram of grain-fed beef. The scarcity of water has a direct impact on human life. When people are forced to walk many kilometers to the nearest source of fresh water, it may take hours away from their day. This, in turn, takes time away from school or from other productive work that helps the general economy. A number of solutions have been proposed to deal with the scarcity of water. Some of them are technological, like the construction of desalination plants. These plants convert brackish salty seawater into water fit for human use. They are very expensive to operate and maintain, though, and cannot meet the world's growing demand for water. Other kinds of solutions involve only a little technology or involve modifying individual people's habits. In a rural part of India, a village facing water shortage started collecting rainwater. A simple system allowed them to save water that fell over a large area and use it during dry periods. In the suburbs that surround the cities of developed countries, house owners are using xeriscaping techniques. The main purpose of xeriscaping, unlike traditional landscaping, is not to use supplemental irrigation. This requires the use of plants, shrubs and trees that are appropriate for the climate. In dry areas, this means planting ones that use less water. In the future, many countries will need to use a variety of these techniques in order to provide enough water for their citizens. Water security will be of utmost importance to those governments, especially in areas that are politically unstable. That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.